Günaydın herkese tekrar. Ryan'ın sunumunu yapacak şu anda Amerika pazarıyla ilgili, yatak sektörü, geri dönüşümle ilgili, buradaki kurallarla ilgili, kanunlarla ilgili herhangi bir soru olursa cevap vermeye çalışacağız. Teşekkürler. Stage is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Nasif. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. We really appreciate the fact that the International Sleep Product Association has been invited to participate in this trade show. We've met a lot of very interesting companies today and yesterday, and look forward to meeting more of you and learning more about the Turkish industry. Nasif asked me to give a brief presentation about who ISPA is, what we do, a little bit of an overview of the US market, and talk about some of the services that we provide to the US industry in terms of consumer research, data, and then recycling efforts. The next slide, please. First of all, who are we? The International Sleep Products Association is the trade association for the mattress industry. We have over 700 members from around the world. We're primarily focused on US issues, US safety issues and US market issues, but we also look at trends around the world, and we coordinate with other groups representing the mattress industry in other markets on recycling issues, safety, and we exchange data with those other groups as well. In addition to the trade association, which is a little over 100 years old, we also have started in 2013 the Mattress Recycling Council. The Mattress Recycling Council is a separate company. I am president of both ISPA and MRC. MRC currently is operating in 3 American states, California, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. In 2024, we will begin operations in Oregon. We have recycled over 10 million mattresses and bases in the last 6 years, and we're looking forward to increasing that business over time. Next slide. ISPA's mission is to lead and advance the interests of the sleep products industry, and our vision is to help the world sleep better. Next, please. Our strategic plan covers 6 goals. The first is to provide data and information to the industry in terms of market developments and trends. The second is to provide information to the industry about the consumer, what the consumer is looking for in mattresses, the sleep health connection, and then communicating industry information to the consumer. The third is advocacy. We are advocates for the industry, primarily in the United States, but also to some extent abroad. We work with the legislators and the regulators in the United States at both the federal and the state and local levels. We're dealing with safety issues, recycling, chemical content, consumer disclosure types of issues that directly affect our members' bottom line. We also want ISPA to be as inclusive as possible. We're not an industry association just for the big players. We represent the entire industry. The large players, the medium companies, and the small family-owned companies. We work with the suppliers, the manufacturers, and the retailers. Our job here is to embrace the entire industry and help provide information, networking opportunities, and advocacy services to the entire industry. To do all of that, our organization needs to be healthy. We do that through membership dues, but we also have publications. We have 2 magazines, Bedtimes and Sleep Savvy, which are focused either on the industry or the retail segment. That provides revenue for us. We also have the ISPA EXPO every 2 years, which again provides networking opportunities for the industry, but also provides revenue to ISPA. And then we have other conferences throughout the year. In terms of the US industry, the revenue has grown steadily over the last 20 years. We had a little bit of a dip during the last recession, but overall, even with the pandemic, sales revenue has gone up. Next slide. But sales volume in terms of units has generally declined over the last several years. Next slide. And that means that the average unit price is going up. Part of that is because of recent inflation in the last year, 18 months, but part of it also is that I think the industry is doing a better job of selling sleep. We're not just selling a piece of equipment at the lowest possible price. We're working with the consumer to address their needs, their health needs, and other needs. And we are making some success, I think, in helping tell the consumer that you need to buy the right equipment to accomplish what you need. So what's changing? We are in a very dynamic period where even though we're all selling rectangles, those rectangles are really changing a lot in terms of how they're delivered and how they're made. Boxed bedding obviously has been a huge disruptor in the US market, and I think that that is a trend globally. I don't know if boxed bedding is a big factor in Turkey, but certainly it's a big trend in Europe and growing trend in Asia. With that has come online retail. Online retail is certainly disrupting the traditional distribution methods. It's forced the brick and mortar retailers obviously to adjust and to become omni-channel. They now need to sell through all channels. In the US market, imports have been a huge factor as well. Imports have accounted for up to 25% of the volume of material coming into the United States. As you may be aware, we've had a number of anti-dumping and countervailing duty cases in the last 3 years in the United States, and that's forced out some imports, but it's opened the door for other imports. Imports will continue to be an important part of the US market. I don't know that they will be as large as they were in terms of market share as they were 4 years ago, but certainly imports are here to stay in the US market. Motion foundations have also been a big change in the market. As the motion foundations have become more popular, they've replaced the traditional foundations, which has been an important part of our market for decades. We also see that the consumer is shifting away from buying both a mattress and a foundation to just buying a mattress. Part of that is because they have different types of bases. They no longer use foundations, but part of it also is the consumer will try to reuse the old foundation. So that's a change in the consumer buying behavior. And then just consumer preferences. I'll get into that in just a minute, but it's really interesting to see across different generations, as well as where the consumer lives, what type of family style they have, and so forth. The preferences are changing very much. Next slide. Just a minute more on the boxed bedding phenomena. We think that this is going to probably continue growing. Certainly during the pandemic, it skyrocketed. Since the pandemic, we're starting to see a little bit of reduction in boxed bedding, but overall, I think that this is a trend that will continue. Next slide. So the impact of boxed bedding is that increased opportunities for online buying. It's lowering the price points for many consumers. It requires different types of materials. So we were just talking to an adhesive manufacturer, and that's certainly an area that has innovated a lot to accommodate the boxed bedding product. We need adhesives that will bond quickly, that will dry quickly, and that will provide good performance in terms of noise and durability. And the adhesive sector has been very responsive to that. And we're seeing other materials lines responding to that, fabric that will recover very well. And I think that those types of innovations will certainly continue for the foreseeable future. One problem, though, that the boxed bedding is introducing is that they have extended the return policies for consumers, at least in the United States. I don't know about Europe or Turkey, but in the United States, it's common to have a 10-month, even a 12-month return policy. This is something we never experienced before, and it's causing big financial problems for some of the boxed bedding brands. So it will be interesting to see if that changes over time. I think, unfortunately, that's one of the features that once you offer it, it's hard to pull it back. And I think that's going to change the market. It also results in a shorter replacement cycle. the types of consumers that are buying box bedding may be the types that will want to replace their beds more frequently. And then it's just disrupting the whole supply chain from the raw materials coming in to the distribution systems as well. The other big change that this is making is that it's mixing and blurring the distinctions that we've had for decades between suppliers, manufacturers, and retailers. 10 years ago, you didn't cross those lines very often. Today, many suppliers are also the retailers. So it's just changing a lot of the dynamics in the market. To follow some of the consumer changes, ISPA has a committee within our organization called the Better Sleep Council. The Better Sleep Council's purpose is to understand the consumer more and then provide information to the consumer that will help her in her decisions to buy a new bed. We don't want the consumer we want to prepare the consumer so that when she comes into the showroom or she goes online, she knows what she wants. What type of bed are you looking for? What dimensions? What price points? We want to prepare the consumer so that when they're ready to make this purchase, they close the deal. They don't just keep shopping. Next. Here's some of the information I was talking about that's very interesting to me. And that is, how are the consumer desires, preferences varying over different segments of the industry? For example, by age. We know that my generation will keep a bed much longer than my children and other generations. We're finding that the younger generations in the United States, at least, are replacing their beds very quickly. My generation will hold on to them a longer period. So that helps the mattress manufacturer think about what type of marketing they should offer to those different generations, but also how do you build the bed? If the young consumer is going to throw their bed away in 7 years, maybe you use different materials. If the older generation wants a bed to last 10, 12, 15 years, you use more durable materials. Likewise, men and women have different desires. If you're a family with children at home or an empty nester, your replacement patterns are different. I think it's also interesting that the urban consumer will tend to replace her mattress more frequently than the suburban or the rural consumer. This type of deeper segmented information, I think, will help the retailer and the manufacturer be more efficient in helping provide the types of products that the consumer wants. So what are the features that the American consumer, at least, is looking for? We did a survey about 3 years ago on this. I think we had over 1,000 respondents. Comfort and support is certainly the biggest feature, but as you can see, all of these are important factors that the consumer is looking for in replacing her mattress. And depending on what type of consumer a given brand is focused on, this information can be useful. Next. What is the consumer willing to pay is an important issue as well. And you can see that, again, if we segment the information, different targets of the consumer audience have different price points. And a manufacturer should keep this in mind when pricing and developing their products. Next. It also looks like we are leaving money on the table. The 3 lines here represent what the consumer expects to pay, what they are prepared to pay. They may not want to, but they're prepared to pay that, and then what they've actually paid. And over time, perhaps because of box bedding, the actual transaction value, at least in our survey, this survey, shows that it's flat to going down, but that the consumer is willing to pay a little bit more. And so we need to think about this. How can we encourage the consumer to go up one level in the type of bed they're paying? How can we persuade the consumer that they really can afford and should buy a better bed than they might be getting? Next. What are some of the threats for the industry? Government intervention, I think, is one of the biggest threats and biggest costs that we face. In the United States, the trend now is to really look at the chemical makeup of our products. In the United States, we are required to use fire retardants in our products, but the fire retardants that we are using, we have very carefully checked, tested, and they are very safe. Unfortunately, the fire retardant category, though, has a very bad public image. And so a lot of environmental groups are targeting all fire retardants, and we spend a lot of our time trying to defend the ones that our industry is using. And that will keep me busy for a long time in the future, unfortunately. Labeling is also an increasing problem or challenge for us. We're seeing in Europe that product passports will be required soon for furniture and mattresses, and I think that's something that will eventually come to the United States. So we're doing work now to try to anticipate what those needs will be so that when the time comes, we're prepared, and we have a format that is practical for the industry and meaningful for the consumer. There's certainly a lot more pressure on the industry to recycle, and we're responding to that. We have developed a system that works well, it's well funded, and we're ready to expand that to other states as necessary. Sustainable manufacturing is also a topic that everyone is talking about in the press in the United States, but also, fortunately, everyone is talking about within the mattress industry. And I'm really excited to see how the mattress industry is responding to this. I think we'll be ready for this, but I think we need to be prepared to push back against some government intervention here. I'm always worried when the government says they know how to do things better than the industry. So we need to be prepared, have the information ready to go. And then finally, I think that we will have big challenges in the future in terms of how we package our products. I think that the box bedding phenomena is great. It allows consumers a new way to get the product into their home efficiently, but it generates a lot of packing waste. And we need to be prepared to adjust our packing methods so that we can take care of that situation. Nassif also wanted me to talk briefly about what some of the regulatory requirements are in the United States, because they are different than what you may be experiencing in Turkey or in Europe. In the United States, we have some very strict flammability requirements. There are two flammability requirements that we must meet. One is to deal with what we call smoldering ignition. If you're a smoker, you fall asleep in bed, and sometimes your cigarette will ignite the bed. In the 1960s, that was a big problem. Many, many people were killed by the fires caused by smoking materials. In the 1970s, we addressed that problem. But then around 2000, 2002, we started to see an increase in fires caused by candles, by lighters, and matches. Unfortunately, in the United States, a lot of little boys like to play with fire. And we learned through research that they would light their matches in their bedroom when their parents were around, and then they would hide under the bed. And it was just a catastrophe. And so the industry responded to that. We worked with the regulators and developed an open flame standard. Those standards require some very rigorous testing. So if you're planning to enter the US market, make sure that you understand those standards and be prepared to work with your customer as well as your suppliers to make sure that you meet those standards. If you don't meet those standards, you cannot sell in the United States. So that's a very important prerequisite, an important requirement for you to come into the United States. There are costs involved, but once you understand the system, it's a system that can work well for you. So you just need to be prepared for that. We have some other standards that are also very important, but they're not as demanding because they don't affect a large part of our product. For example, lead. We can't have lead in our children's products. The lead tends to be a problem, as far as I'm aware, only in some of the dyes and pigments that are used in some of the outer cloth, but that's easy to adjust for. Phthalates are another chemical. It tends to be used in children's products or in products for the elderly. It provides some water barrier protection, and that can be a problem. So if you're targeting either the older generation or the children, you need to be aware of those standards. And then finally, one of the areas in the United States that can be a challenge for some companies is the types of health claims you can make. For example, during the pandemic, some companies were claiming that their fabric had antimicrobial capabilities or other types of health capabilities. In the United States, you cannot make those types of claims unless you get government approval. And the government approval process is very demanding and also time-consuming. So be alert to that. Significant fines can be imposed if you violate those rules. In the United States, we have federal requirements. We also have local states have their own requirements. Those will include the label that you put on your product. You have to be very precise in what types of materials you list on the label. Again, it's a challenge the first time you come into the industry or come into the market, but once you understand the rules, it works pretty well. And then there are various chemical requirements. For example, in one state, you're forbidden to use some types of fiber. In other states, it's a different fiber. So you need to understand the local requirements a little bit before you start marketing. We don't have too many of those rules, but there are enough that you just need to be strategic about how you design your product. Can you design a product that will be sold in all states? Or do you need to be especially strategic so that you sell in some states but not everywhere? There are consultants who can help you provide information. ISPA can also provide you some information on that. Next slide. The last major topic I'd like to talk about is recycling. Recycling is a big issue for the industry. Our product is large, it's very visible. It's something that the politicians like to focus on. And so they say that because beds are big and costly for our solid waste systems, it's the industry's responsibility for taking care of them. We also know that how you deal with your old bed can be a barrier to consumers buying a new bed. The consumer thinks, well, I need a new bed, but what do I do with my old one? We want to make it easy for the consumer to get rid of their old bed so that is not a hindrance to sales. In the United States, we estimate that at least 15 million mattresses are discarded annually. As I said, we created the MRC to handle these. We've been in operation since 2015. And today we are able to recycle about 72 or 73% of the weight of all mattresses that come into our system. We think this is an excellent example of a public-private partnership where the industry has taken responsibility, we're doing it under the supervision of the government, and we're doing it very efficiently. Next slide. As I mentioned, to date, we've recycled over 10 million mattresses. We've diverted over 175,000 metric tons of steel, foam, fiber, and wood from landfills that are being used to make new products. And we've saved more than 7.6 million cubic meters of landfill space. And I think it's important here to mention that we are not burning this material. We're not using it to generate heat. We are using these materials to make new product. We're making rebonded foam to use as carpet pad. The fiber is being used in insulation. The steel certainly is very readily recyclable, and so forth. In order to do these types of programs, the industry insists on 4 basic elements. Number 1, we want the program to be run by the industry. We don't want the government to run it. We want to be able to be in charge of it so that we can coordinate the actions and make sure that it fits what the consumer wants and what the industry wants. We also want it to be funded by the consumer. In the United States, recycling programs are often funded by the industry, but we don't want that. We don't think that that's a fair and equitable way to fund these programs. Instead, we charge the consumer. The retailer charges the consumer a small fee when she buys a mattress. That money is then sent from the retailer to my company. We use that money to then hire the recyclers. So it's a very efficient funding mechanism. It gives us enough money to do the job, but it's a small amount. The fee also helps us create a conversation with the consumer. She asks, well, why am I paying $10 more? Well, you're paying that so that we can recycle your mattress and use it to make new products. And the consumers are very supportive of that, so it's a good system. The state provides oversight, but they don't micromanage. We want to be in charge of the administration. And then finally, we want to make sure I don't wind up in jail. We want to have an antitrust exemption so that we can set the prices and do what we need to do without having to worry about the antitrust laws. As I said, funding is a big part of our program. We use those funds then to collect the discarded units. We provide trucks and trailers to handle them. In California alone, we have 14,000 truckloads of mattresses coming into our system every year. We're also using the money to improve operations. We train the recyclers on how to be better in terms of managing their facilities, how to avoid fire safety problems, and so forth. We're also spending about $1 million a year to find new and better uses for recycled materials. And we're also working with the industry to try to bring circularity into the manufacturing process as well as the product design process. We're hosting a conference. ISPA is hosting a conference in November in the United States. It's our first sustainability conference. We will have people there giving examples of how they have embodied sustainability concepts in their businesses, how they're thinking about how can we use fewer materials in our products, and how can we design our products so that they're easier to recycle at the end of their useful life. Next. As I said, part of the process is to provide transportation. One big part of our process is the recyclers themselves. We pay a fee to the recyclers who will dismantle the materials, separate the foam, steel, wood from each other, and then send those materials to the recycling markets. Any revenue that they get from selling the steel and the foam and other materials is revenue to the companies. And in addition, we pay them a processing fee. Our fee also covers education and outreach to explain to the consumer, how do you recycle a mattress, what happens to it? And then we, as I said, we also administer the program and conduct research. Next. To communicate with the consumer, we have in-store publicity materials, advertising campaigns. We run TV ads as well as print ads, public service announcements on the radio. We also heavily use social media and then community events. When there's a local community fair, we often will bring a trailer to the event. Consumers can bring their used mattresses with them. Or we have a little kiosk where children can learn about recycling. We're trying to educate the consumer that recycling a mattress is not a big problem, that we make it easy for them. Right now, in terms of R&D, we have about 20 projects that we either have completed or have ongoing. We're focusing on identifying new and better uses for the materials. Next slide. We want to increase the recycling rate from the 72% up to something over 75%. We want to improve the financial health of our recyclers. If we can find better markets for our recyclers, they will be more sustainable, and perhaps we will have to pay them less in terms of a processing fee. We want them to succeed. They're important to our process. We want to reduce our environmental impact. As I mentioned, last year we had 14,000 trucks taking mattresses from retailers, from landfills, to our recyclers. We want to try to reduce that. We want to improve the recycling, the efficiency of our collection system. 45% of our carbon footprint on the recycling side is devoted to transport. So we're trying to compress mattresses that are coming into our system. We're trying to be more efficient that way, and we're trying to help our recyclers be more efficient as well. We're also looking to anticipate new challenges. One of the challenges that we've faced is what do we do with pocketed coils? Pocketed coils are a wonderful product for the consumer. They're easy to manufacture. They provide really good comfort and support. But at the end of the useful life, they are very difficult to recycle. And so we're working with other groups to figure out how do you avoid some of the adhesives problems that we have in pocketed coils. But we've also developed a machine that will help separate the pocketed coils more efficiently. So those are the types of challenges we're looking to avoid in the future. Some of the projects we have ongoing right now are taking mattress materials, carbonizing them. They can then be used for battery electrodes, for high-capacity batteries. Some of the foam can be chemically converted into a material that can be mixed with a material called zeolite to make a low-strength cement. You wouldn't want to use it for buildings, but you can use it for paving. You can use it for some roads, sound barriers. It's a much more energy-efficient cement-making process. That work is being conducted in California. and we should have something available, hopefully, in the next couple of years that can be used commercially. We're also looking at taking foam and putting it under pressure and heat to convert the structure of the foam so that it could be used for shoe soles or for tool grips. Turn it into a rubber-like material that can be used for other purposes. And then we're also looking at taking the wood from our foundations for particle board production. We're also working on using rebonded foam for oil absorption applications. For example, if there's an oil spill or a marina where boats are regularly discharging small amounts of oil or gasoline into the water, we can use the rebonded foam to collect that oil. Textile recycling is one of the biggest challenges. We use a lot of blended fibers in our products, and the blended fibers are great from a performance standpoint, but they have virtually no value in the scrap market. And so we're using enzymatic digestion to take apart the fabric. For example, if you have a cotton polyester blend, there are enzymes that will dissolve the cotton and leave the polyester behind. We can take some of the gases that come from the cotton, use that as fuel, and then use the polyester again to make new products. We're studying the age of our products so that we understand what the product flow will be. When would we expect to see more pocketed coils coming in? When would we expect to see more foam coming in? We need to be able to forecast that for our recyclers, and to do that, we need to understand better the age of the product mix. And finally, we're working with our recyclers to reduce fire risks in the plants. Foam is a very flammable material. We educate the recyclers on the importance of having fire suppression equipment, but we also want to make sure that the workers are safe, and we're worried that if we have a bad reputation for fires, then no company would want to rent space for our recyclers. So we want to make sure that we control those risks as well. Finally, we've developed several programs within MRC to help raise the awareness of the manufacturers to their responsibility. We've created what we call the Sleep Products Sustainability Program, or SP2. And SP2 is a continuous improvement program where we work with the manufacturers to talk about how can you reduce waste in your plant, how can you reduce the amount of utilities and water that you consume, how can you also institute programs to continually improve your process over time. We've had 3 companies complete the process now. It was slowed down during COVID, but now it's starting to pick up again. And we offer this free of charge to any manufacturers that are based in California. And we're looking to expand this nationally, but right now we're fine-tuning the program in California. Next. Okay, that's it. I hope this has been helpful. I would love to answer any questions you might have. We're here to serve the industry, and we look forward to meeting more of you and talking to you. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Comparing manufacturing in Turkey and importing to USA
Yes.
versus bringing Turkish machinery and the supply to the United States and manufacturing there, what would be the advantages and disadvantages of two?
Well, right now there's an anti-dumping order on finished mattresses coming into from Turkey to the United States. So that is a big obstacle. Materials can certainly come into the United States, so if you're making fabric or springs or even foam or other materials, that type of material can be shipped into the United States very easily, but finished product would be difficult. I think there's certainly a demand for new equipment. Right now, in the next 6 months to 12 months, I think the US market is declining. So the next year may not be a good time for selling new equipment. Many manufacturers may be reducing their capital expenditures in the short term, but long term, I think there's going to be a healthy demand. I think one of the impacts of COVID has been that we're seeing more manufacturing going on in the United States. So I think that there's good potential for materials and good potential for equipment into the United States.
So the next year, because of the potential of recession would happen next year, that would be the reason?
We are already experiencing a decline. The first 2 quarters of 2022 were terrible for us. Sales were down 20%, 25%. Part of that is because during COVID, consumers were improving their home and they were replacing their mattresses more quickly than they were before. So for example, the product that we would sell in 2023, we sold that last year. So it's natural that we would have maybe a little decline, but then the economy is also slowing down. And in the United States, and I think around the world, mattresses are something that you need, but if the mattress is wearing out, you can wait to replace it. It's not like your car. If you have a flat tire, you have to replace the flat tire. If you have a sagging mattress, you can wait a year, maybe 2. And I think we're seeing that as well. And I think the recession in the United States is just starting. Will it be a deep recession or will it be a soft landing? We don't know. But I think that for the next 6 months, it will be a soft market for the US. And as a result, I think many mattress producers will say, I'm going to use the same machinery for now. I'll put off my capital expenditure till 23, 24. Any other question?
I can ask one more or you continue?
Please.
ISPA and associations in Europe regarding recycling or sustainability?
Yes. We are working with our counterparts with the European Bedding Industries Association. We're also working with the Australian industry. We've created what we call the Recycling Summit. We've met 3 times now. We met last in Orlando in March. March was when we had our ISPA Expo. The next meeting will be at Interzoom in May of 23. And we're talking with our European counterparts and everybody around the world about recycling. We're sharing information about what are the laws in each of the countries, what are some of the new technologies. We're working with the European Bedding Industry Association on the product passport. So yes, there's a very active conversation going on. If we don't have any representatives from Turkey there, and if there's an interest in Turkish companies to get involved in recycling, we would welcome them. I think we all benefit from this conversation.
Is there any signs from the government that there will be a regulation regarding recyclability for mattresses?
In Europe?
Yeah.
Yes, it's my understanding is that it will become European-wide. I think it's taking a long time to implement that. Certainly the French have had a very active program for about 10 years. I know that the Belgians and I think the Dutch are moving forward. Germany, I'm not so sure what's going on. I don't know what's happening in Italy. I don't think there's any national program in Italy, but I think all the European states are expected to have their own recycling programs, but each of them is doing it in its own way.
Maybe one more question to that. What is, you put recycling still as a threat on the slide, not as an opportunity, so that gives some notion, but what is hindering you to roll that out on the other states in the US out of the 50?
Well, and it's a good point, because it is an opportunity, but it is also a threat. It's politics that's slowing us down. I don't know about your countries, but our politicians are very mischievous. They like to be insistent on some things. For example, we have a system that's working very well in California, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. And we proposed the same system in Minnesota and in Massachusetts this year. Well, the politicians got involved and they said, here we have an industry that wants to do something. Let's demand something more from them. In Massachusetts, there is a small recycling company that is being supported by the state. And so they were persuading the legislatures that we should pay not only a processing fee, which we're happy to do, but we should also pay a subsidy of $18 per mattress to help provide social services to the employees of this existing company. The existing company is set up to take people from prison, people who have drug addictions, to help them learn a skill, learn how to function in society. Excellent purpose. We support that fully, and we're prepared to pay a fair price for the services. But to provide the housing and education and things like that. That's more than this business should support. We think that we can help them, but we shouldn't have to pay 100%. And so it's that type of problem that we're encountering. Another big issue is who pays. That's a discussion we're having in New York right now. So many times the government wants industry to pay. We have deep pockets. We have money everywhere, of course. And so they want us to pay for everything. We're resisting that. We think that the consumer should pay for this service, and it's worked well in the other states, and so we're negotiating very hard on that. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing. The other challenges are that once you start doing something, then the government is starting to demand more and more. So for example, in Connecticut, the state would like us to collect the units from the consumer at their house. Okay, that sounds nice, but that would raise our costs twice, 3 times as much as what we currently pay. And so there's a constant negotiation going on between the industry and either the regulators or the legislature. And we hope that we can build a reputation of being honest about what we're doing, about being efficient, and about being effective in what we're doing, that the legislatures will agree with us, but it's not a perfect world, and so we have to negotiate with them.
Thanks.
You had another question?
With the ISPA, did you guys ever research about like the mattresses being used as a grounding and earthing apparatus, like connecting to the outlets? You know, there are some accessories being sold, and also the air circulation underneath the mattress is required. So in terms of this health perspective, did you guys do any research on that?
No.
Earthing, grounding, and air circulation under the mattress.
As a trade association, no, we've not done any research on that. I know that many suppliers are looking at those types of issues, and we're starting to see some of those technologies come through in the mattresses. Our job is to deal with issues that individual companies cannot solve on their own. So for example, statistics. One company can try to understand the full market, but it's probably more efficient for us to try to collect the information from everybody. Government affairs. One company cannot defend the entire industry when it comes to chemical safety or fire safety, but we do that. Recycling. It doesn't make sense for Tempur Sealy to recycle their beds and for Serta to recycle their beds. We take on those broader industry issues. But on those types of product-specific technology developments, that's up to the companies to do. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you again for inviting us to participate, and thank you for your time.